Al Capone was one of the most feared gangsters in history, but the scars that earned him the nickname Scarface, they weren't from a shootout or a brutal mob war. They came from one reckless mistake. Before he ruled Chicago, he was just a young thug working as a bouncer. One night, he made the wrong comment to the wrong woman, and her gangster brother made sure he'd wear the consequences for life. 3 quick slashes across his face, and just like that, Scarface was born. But what happened next? That's where the real story begins. Today we're diving into 3 shocking stories about Al Capone that'll change how you see America's most notorious gangster. We'll explore how the king of Chicago's criminal empire was brought down not by bullets, but by paperwork. Then we'll reveal his surprising secret that made thousands of struggling Americans call him a hero. And finally, we'll tell you the full story behind those infamous scars that gave him his nickname. If you're ready to discover the untold stories behind history's most infamous figures, hit that subscribe button now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Picture Chicago in the roaring 20s. The city was Capone's personal playground, where he ran an empire worth an estimated $100 million. That's over $1.5 billion in today's money. His organization controlled everything: speakeasies, brothels, gambling dens, and racetracks. He had politicians in his pocket, police on his payroll, and judges under his thumb. At the height of his power, Capone lived like a king. He occupied a suite at the Lexington Hotel, wore custom-made suits that cost $500 each, about $8,000 today, and drove around in a 7-ton, custom-built Cadillac with inch-thick bulletproof glass. The car alone cost him $20,000, more than most Americans would earn in a decade. But here's where it gets interesting. While Capone flaunted his wealth openly, he never filed a single tax return. Not one. He didn't even have a bank account in his name. When asked about his income, he'd famously say, "They can't collect legal taxes from illegal money." He thought he was untouchable. Enter Frank Wilson, a quiet, methodical IRS investigator who would become Capone's worst nightmare. While other law enforcement agencies were trying to pin murders and racketeering charges on Capone, Wilson spent 3 years meticulously building a case. He and his team went through thousands of documents, traced cash transactions, and interviewed hundreds of witnesses. They discovered that Capone's organization kept 2 sets of books, one fake, one real. The real ledgers showed enormous profits from his gambling operations alone. Wilson's team also found receipts from custom tailors, jewelry stores, and car dealers. They proved Capone was spending far more than any legitimate businessman could afford. The final nail in the coffin? They flipped his bookkeeper, Leslie Shumway, who testified about the millions flowing through Capone's empire. On October 17, 1931, Capone was found guilty on 3 felony counts of tax evasion and 2 misdemeanors. The judge handed down the harshest sentence ever given for tax evasion: 11 years in federal prison, plus $50,000 in fines and $215,000 in back taxes. What surprises you more? That Capone never paid taxes, or that it took the government so long to catch him? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now, let's talk about Capone's other side, the one that made him a hero to thousands of desperate Chicagoans. During the depths of the Great Depression, when unemployment hit 25% and people were literally starving in the streets, Capone saw an opportunity to change his image. In 1931, he opened a soup kitchen at 935 South State Street. But this wasn't some small operation. This was Capone doing what he did best: thinking big. The kitchen served 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. At its peak, it fed up to 3,500 people daily. The menu wasn't just soup and bread either. They served full meals: coffee, sweet rolls, and soup for breakfast, soup, bread, and coffee for lunch. And for dinner, they served beef stew, bread, coffee, and even dessert. The operation cost Capone's organization an estimated $300,000 a year to run. That's over $5 million in today's money. He employed dozens of people to keep it running 24/7, including professional chefs and servers. The kitchen was spotlessly clean, efficiently run, and open to anyone who needed a meal, no questions asked. Newspapers at the time reported touching scenes: mothers with small children waiting patiently in line, elderly couples sharing meals, and unemployed men getting their first hot food in days. One reporter noted that the servers treated everyone with dignity, like customers in a restaurant, rather than charity cases. But here's what really made it special. While other soup kitchens required people to prove they were destitute or sit through religious services, Capone's kitchen asked nothing in return. No sermons, no paperwork, no humiliation. Just food for hungry people. If this unexpected side of Al Capone surprised you, hit that like button and share this video with someone who loves discovering history's hidden stories. Finally, let's dive deeper into the story of those infamous scars. It was 1917, and young Al Capone was working as a bouncer at the Harvard Inn, a rough bar in Coney Island owned by gangster Frankie Yale. Capone was just 18, but already developing a reputation as a tough guy who could handle trouble. One night, a beautiful young woman named Lena Galluccio walked in with her sister. Capone, who'd been drinking, was immediately smitten. As she passed his station, he leaned in and whispered, "Honey, you have a nice ass, and I mean that as a compliment." Some versions of the story say, he added, "Baby, you're a real looker," and tried to put his arm around her. What Capone didn't know was that Lena's brother, Frank Galluccio, was sitting nearby. Frank was a made man in the local Italian gang, known for his quick temper and quicker knife hand. He immediately confronted Capone, demanding an apology. Capone, young and arrogant, refused. The fight was over in seconds. Galluccio pulled out a pocket knife and slashed Capone 3 times, once across his left cheek, once near his jaw, and once close to his ear. The cuts were deep, requiring a total of 80 stitches and leaving scars that would mark him for life. But here's what's fascinating about this incident. It changed how Capone operated forever. Instead of seeking revenge, which was the expected response in the criminal underworld, Capone admitted he was wrong. He later even hired Galluccio as a bodyguard, saying he respected a man who would stand up for his sister's honor. The scars became his trademark, though he hated when people stared at them. Photographers were instructed to only shoot his right side, and he developed a habit of tilting his head to hide the worst of the damage. In a strange twist of fate, these scars may have helped his criminal career. They made him more memorable, more intimidating, and added to his growing legend. Want more deep dives into history's most fascinating figures? Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Our next story about one of history's most controversial characters might just change how you see the world.